Okay, so I want to finish off the fall of Jerusalem and the collapse of Judah. And where we left off last time was kind of the second wave of exile. So in the first wave, Daniel and most of the young people in Judah were taken. And then in the second wave of exile, we saw Ezekiel taken. So here's what we have at the moment. We've got Daniel and Ezekiel in Babylon with most of the exiles. And they are speaking and prophesying to the people there. But you've got Jeremiah, who is still back in Jerusalem. The walled city of Jerusalem has not fallen yet, with King Zedekiah. Now, here's the thing. All of the exiles in Babylon are wanting to be back in Jerusalem. So Ezekiel's message to them is, no, submit to the yoke of Babylon, stay here, because Jerusalem is about to be completely destroyed. God said that it was. Everything that Jeremiah has prophesied has come true, and Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. You do not want to go back there. God has left the building. God is not there. What's a really significant part of Ezekiel and his prophecies is that he sees God leaving the temple, right? And that's a really, really powerful message to the people in Babylon. God is not limited to a temple. And a matter of fact, he's already left because destruction is coming. So, Jeremiah, still some people left in Jerusalem with King Zedekiah. And Nebuchadnezzar comes and he starts surrounding the city. And Zedekiah finds himself in the same position that Hezekiah found himself in years later. And Jeremiah comes to the king and he says, listen, if you will humble yourself, if you will trust it, if you will do what I say, your life will be spared. And what he tells him to do is to submit himself to Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. So here we go. Zedekiah, just like Hezekiah, has this moment. Who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust Yahweh? Are you going to trust the prophets that he's been sending? I mean, at this point, Jeremiah has been prophesying for about 38 years. And Zedekiah has a choice. Trust Yahweh and experience some measure of redemption and mercy. But Zedekiah is going, this doesn't make sense. Why would I submit to Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon? They will kill me. And so he doesn't do it. And it's really sad because he doesn't listen. What ends up happening is Nebuchadnezzar comes in and he kills all of Zedekiah's leaders. He actually kills his sons right before him. And then he plucks out Zedekiah's eyes, binds him up in chains, and takes him to Babylon. And so the final king of Judah experiences just this horrific end that he did not have to, but he didn't trust Yahweh. He refused. So the story, of Jerusalem ends. The walls are completely torn down, so the city is just rubble, completely rubble. It's no longer a fortified city where people can live. The walls are completely torn down, and this is where they burn down and completely destroy God's temple. So the temple is looted, it's completely destroyed, and Jerusalem doesn't cease to exist anymore. And just Jeremiah, like I said, he's been prophesying to his nation for about 38 years, and his life is spared. He's not taken into captivity, but he is not spared from the torment and the devastation of having to watch his people killed, his city, his home, his nation completely destroyed. Because they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't submit themselves and trust God. And so Jeremiah laments. He laments over the destruction of the city and the destruction of the people. He writes Lamentations. And that's really where this story ends. And I just can't help but think back to the very beginning of the Torah when God chose the nation of Israel as his people. And he said, listen, I'm choosing you to be a light to the nations. I'm choosing to enter this covenant relationship with you. And if you will be obedient, I will bless you. And if you won't be obedient, there will be covenant curses. And in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, listen, I have set before you today life and death. Choose life. There is a path of life in front of you. There's a path of death in front of you. Choose life. And it's just really sad that both Israel in the north and Judah in the south chose the path of destruction. The path of life is not always easy. It requires trusting in a God that we can't always see or hear verbally. It requires trusting in his people who are speaking for him. And yet the path of life is full of blessing and just full of life. right? And so at the end of the story, complete destruction for Israel and Judah. And so now the story shifts to all of God's people being in captivity in Babylon. And yeah, that's where a couple of books of the Bible take place in that scenario. And then we have how the Old Testament ends is God is faithful to his promise, which is that he said he would free them in 70 years. So he said, you will experience Babylonian captivity for 70 years, and then I am going to restore you to the land. And that's where the rest of the history is going to take place.